And what we actually say is that no job is beneath us. And the idea with that is that it doesn't matter whether you're the cleaner, you're the CEO, or you're somewhere in between. If something needs to get done, we all jump in and we just get it done.
Welcome back to part 2 with James Maitland from Salvo Group. So James, flying back onto what we were saying, it's a very, very interesting mindset for someone who's sold so many real estates and is such a big developer. I mean, not many people have done 500 apartments, never mind 1,000. You guys are over 4,000 and counting, to have that, I guess, that way of thinking. So he's been one of your mentors, longest standing mentors, which do you still have any other mentors or coaches around business?
Look, there's plenty of industry specific people. And I think, I probably would say, 15 years ago, in Sydney, I had a number of, there was a couple of mentors I had that were sort of managing directors of some of the big commercial agencies. And they gave a very different perspective. And that's why I found it to be sort of a bit of a change in mindset, which was good. One of my previous mentors there was very much about, the traditional sales, listing, selling, and gave me a really good understanding around sales. But I think it's probably also maybe the entrepreneur concept, or, the mindset of an employee versus a business owner. And you can be an employee, but you can act like a business owner. That is really different. When you're an employee, you're about doing, what you're told and sort of saying, well, this is just what the company does. When you have a business owner mindset, you say, well, why not? Why don't we do this? Why don't we change that? Why don't we go here? Why don't we do that?
It's being a leader.
Correct.
No matter what position you hold, it's about being leader. It's taking accountability. It's seeing ways, how can I do this better? It's about questioning it and not using those words as we've always done it this way.
Correct. And look, don't get me wrong. I love big businesses. I love the structure and the compliance that they have. But I also think that they, because they are so big, they stifle a lot of that creativity, because there's so many processes you got to go through, so many different levels of, you got to write a report about a report about a report.
A meeting about
the meeting about the meeting to have the meeting for this meeting, that it tires people out. And that's one of the great things with this organization is that, whilst we deal in big projects and we do a lot of big things, where, there is no sort of, hierarchy and structure. We're just one sort of team that really knows what each of our, team members do and what they're responsible for. And we just quickly go through things. We make quick decisions. We're able to sort of change tactics and sort of move as things go.
How do you find that balance though, James? Because I know what you're saying and it makes sense. And we've got 5 services we offer. One of our values is one team, because I found that one of our greatest challenges and one of the things that I love the most is getting us all to be singing from the same handbook. But sometimes it is quite challenging because we're looking at a finance. We've got the finance arm, the property management arm as well, selling real estate, accounting, financial planning. And sometimes it is a challenge because they're all looking at their own profit centers or whatever the case may be. So how do you find that balance?
I don't think we've got it perfect yet. And I think it is a challenge, as you said, because, one team in their own right could be performing really well, but as part of the greater organization, they're perhaps not gelling and fitting in. And, at the end of the day, business is very much, you're either producing a product or a service. And if you're producing a product, you're less reliant on people. They're still important. If you're doing a service, it's 1000% the people, right? Because you're providing a personal service delivered by the people. When you're doing a product, traditional manufacturing firms, it's about a bit of a system. And sure, the factory, the line workers and everything are important, but they become less critical because it's systemized. So, when you've got to rely on people, you'll find often at a certain size, everything's really good, right? Because you're all talking, you're all together in the same room, you're bouncing the ideas off, and you're seamless. All of a sudden, you mix it up. One of those key people leaves, they move on, they change. They might even just have a mindset change, and things start to get a bit harder. You start to want to scale and grow, and you say, "Hey, we're in different locations, or we're in the same office, but we don't talk anymore because we're all busy doing that," and things start to break down. So one of the things that we've done over the last few years, we created a document that we called a clarity compass. Something that I learnt, from an online sort of American style business course. They were over the top. I had a look at it at the start of the lockdowns we had early 2020, sorry. And what they did was they said, if you can't sum up on one page what it is that your reason for being in business is, what your core values are, what your competitive advantages are, and your why, then you're never going to be able to communicate that to the staff. You're never going to be able to scale and grow because you're constantly going to be holding people back. If you can give that to them, you can empower them and say, every decision you make, look to that clarity compass and say, does that line up with what we're doing? Is that part of one of our core goals? Does that make sense? Is that leveraging one of our core competitive advantages going there? People 9 times out of 10 will make the right decision.
Can I ask you a question? Because I'm actually working on that document. I always work on it at Reventon. Do you work on that collectively with a group of people? Do you work on it, you start it with yourself and then bring it together? How do you do that document?
We did that with, I put in the room all of the key managers and business drivers. So there was probably about 10 or 11 of us. And we sat down and we had a bit of a session and we thought we'd done a really good job. And I took it all away. We had post-it notes on the whiteboard. We're having discussions. We're looking at it. I said, this is fantastic. I got all those post-it notes, collected them, went home that night. I said, I'm tired. Let's do this in the morning. I came back with fresh eyes and I looked at it and I went, this sucks. And the reason that it sucked is we were thinking like theoretical people. We had a predetermined, and it was partly my fault because, I introduced this and I said, this is what we want to do. This is the outcome we're trying to achieve. And people came in with a predetermined idea of what it was that were our values, what should be our competitive advantages, not what was. And so I actually then said, you know what, let's go back. And I actually stripped it down in part because some people, were busy and couldn't make it back again for the next day. And I think we cut it down to about 5 of us. And I said, everything we did the other day, we're going to throw it in the bin because we were thinking about what we want to be, not who we are right now.
So your core strengths, you mean?
Yeah.
And where you can deliver and add the most value?
Correct. Because, you think about it, you recruit someone new. They don't know your company and you say, here's our clarity compass. These are our values. These are our core strengths. This is our goal. And they say, great, love it. After a month or two, they go, they're not your values.
Because that's what you want to be, not what you are.
Correct.
So you're asking them to embody something that you're trying to achieve, but you're not living and breathing. So
exactly.
It's very, very hard to do.
And then how do you empower them with this to make decisions on when they go, but that's not the way you guys are. That's not here. That's not there. So, we turn that upside down. And, the first thing we started with the values is I said, why don't you all write? And I love to do, one of the things I've learned whenever you're trying to have group discussions is you actually need to not talk out loud. And what I mean by that is if you ask a question or you want some thoughts from everyone, I love post-it notes. I give it to them and I say, write it on there.
So you don't influence the other person?
Exactly.
And you can actually hear their thoughts.
Yeah. And I get them to stick the post-it notes out because you'll be surprised. Everyone goes, oh, no, that doesn't matter anymore. I agree with him. And I say, give me a post-it note and read it. We read it out and everyone goes, oh, yeah, I like that. So one of the things that I did in that point is I said, right, why don't you do this? I said, I'll go first. I said, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Why don't you talk about, when we talked about the values, what are some of the things that you like about what I do and what you think that I deliver to this organization or as an individual, because ultimately we are where we are because of this group of people. So let's look at what are our core strengths. What are some of the things that we, want to impart on everyone else that joins, and we came up with a completely different framework. And it's something that now you look at it, we bring new people in, we say this is who we are, we say this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, and we are.
I love that. And I actually, I hired a few external companies. I did one most recently as well, which we did exactly that with the big sticky notes. And it's very, very interesting because I think you're really aligned when you think a certain way and you get people to say, what do you think about that? And it's the same. Because people think, what are you strong at? And they write these things down and other people write something totally different. I said, well, obviously you're not either authentic or you're not really understanding the feedback of how you approach people or how you listen or how you learn.
Yeah, and look, aspirational values and so forth are great, but they're not who you are now and who the organisation is. They might be things that you say, right, we all think that's a good thing. Let's put a plan to get there so that we do live and breathe that value.
So a blueprint.
Correct. But right now we need to say these are our values. So, everybody, if you think about the boilerplate, boring stuff you see people do, integrity, honesty, all these kind of things, well, they're kind of what we just say, just a given, right? Do you ever interview someone and say, hi, I'm looking for someone who has no integrity, is dishonest and is going to steal? You don't. You just make an assumption. That's just a mandatory minimum to even join this organization.
What other values?
So you don't make them.
What other values you came up with?
Look, we have 8 core values, but, some of the key ones, you talked about one team. We have that, and what we actually say is that no job is beneath us. And the idea with that is that it doesn't matter whether you're the cleaner, you're the CEO, or you're somewhere in between. If something needs to get done, we all jump in and we just get it done. And that's like literally we write it in that language. So it's not this copywritten concept. It is what we mean, which is if this business needs some help and that's there, we all jump in and help.
Roll your sleeves up, get it done. What
else? Correct. One of the things is hard work, right? And it might sound, again, just a minimum, and it is. But I think, going back to what we talked about in the previous episode where I said hard work pays off, it's about actually saying that we never give up and we keep going and we just keep working and working and working at it. We also, we talk about in there that we also want to, have some, I'm trying to think of the exact plain English and it's so basic it's not there, but when we talk about the integrity and so forth, that we talk about actually, being honest and upfront when we don't know things. And I'm just trying to remember the wording that we use, but it's almost as be honest. If you don't understand something or you can't do it, be honest and admit it. Because, there's nothing that you hate more when you ask someone to do something and say, yep, and they got no idea what they're doing. You'd rather say, I'm out of my depths. I'm not sure. I need help.
But I'll follow it up. I'll figure it out. I'll come back to you.
Yep.
That's what first and foremost clients want. That's what our team wants.
Yep.
Nothing worse than yesing you and you walk away and you go, but you said yes. I had no idea what you were talking about though.
Probably another one that we've got, which is really important, is we talk about act with urgency and decisiveness. And what I mean by that is you've got to make those decisions and you've got to back your decision. They're not always going to be right, but we've got to, we're a fast-moving business and we've got to actually not get stuck in that sort of merry-go-round of...
So decide and commit.
Decide, commit, and do it with urgency. Don't fly off the handle, but also don't overthink it. Don't manage by committee. Don't try and get too much, because often if you look at this value, this sort of clarity compass, you think about what we're good at, you think about the goal, you should be able to make that decision quickly and stick with that decision. Now, if it turns out to be the wrong decision, you don't keep banging your head against the wall. But more often than not, that quick decision is often the right decision,
because you're
and
going
you
with
need
your
to back
gut.
yourself.
You're
Correct.
going with your gut. It's what advice one of my friends, one of his mentors gave me, goes, I love a good decision. I don't mind a bad one. I can't stand indecisiveness.
Yeah.
In other words, it's the exact same philosophy as that. Be nimble, be quick, decide, move on, and keep going.
Yeah.
And it's they're all these things that I hear, all these mentors, coaches, but I'm talking not the ones that are on YouTube that have never ran businesses, people like yourself, people that like Salvo. It's all starts to say the same language, and it's always intriguing. I love listening to it.
And, I think it goes back to that very core of where I said, at the start, one of the key ones is nothing is beneath you. When we talked about, learning from other businesses, knowing what your customer wants and so forth, it's about never thinking that something is not important. That doesn't mean that you want to be, focusing your time on things that perhaps are not adding that value, but you always want to be looking back and thinking, hey, could we do that a better way? Is there something that could be added to this, or is actually something that we thought was actually not high value changed and become really high value, or should we make it a high value thing?
It could be a service or a business.
Exactly.
So in your case, you mentioned before you started in the real estate, property management, finance. When did you think, hey, that's probably something we should start adding? Because I know you've got thousands of properties on your rent roll.
Look, property management was, something that was always in my mindset, that is just a given complementary service, and if it's done well. And I think if you look at some of those integrated, businesses throughout the country, some of them can be, looked at by people that perhaps are not in the industry, or some of the industry people that maybe not as successful, and they think it's not so good. If we look at one of the really successful businesses, Meriton, Harry Triggerboff, right? He's been doing it for so long, but a lot of people go, oh yeah, that's Meriton. But you know what? That is one of the most successful businesses, and he's across all those disciplines, and he does it really well.
It's a blueprint, isn't it?
Correct. And, one of the things that he does that I think people miss, he knows his market, he knows his customers, and he does what they want. So sure, people go, oh yeah, but that's a Meriton product. He's not saying that he's building the multi-million-dollar houses in Toorak or in Potts Point or wherever it is. He's saying, I'm building exactly to my market, and I'm doing it really, really well. So that's, something that I think is a really good blueprint. Property management we've had for a long time. We've evolved over the years. We've grown. We recently, a couple of years ago, merged that with another organisation and grew that again, and really looked to roll out that blueprint even further. Home loans, relatively new. We've been working with a number of partners over the last decade, and it really came about by getting to know our customers more and saying, look, as things have evolved, you'd remember I think it was late 2015 when the banks changed, APRA changed the way that they could assess certain things. Self-employed people struggled all of a sudden to meet the serviceability for home loans. Overseas buyers used to be able to go to the local Westpac branch and get a loan. All of a sudden, they were gone. So from that point forward, I think things, as they started to change, finance became a really important thing in the whole home buying and home ownership journey. So, you start to partner with the right people, find what's working, what's not. And one thing led to another. And I said, right, this is really complementary. And I think if we're going to do this, this should sort of become something that we bring in-house. And that's where I said, thinking about having the right team was actually saying, you know what, we could start this from scratch ourselves, but it's not something that we're really good at. We don't have decades of experience. Let's partner first with someone, learn, think about it, and say, you know what, that's not something that we can just replicate. Let's merge that together as well.
Does it require our attention? Should we go more? So you're getting the feedback, you're getting a business which understands their market. You can listen to the feedback to ultimately sell your apartments, I guess. Get the property management.
Yeah. And look, and everything feeds everything. It's amazing when you talked about that ecosystem. You've got all these businesses that are so complementary yet so different, but you're all talking to the same customer pool. And, the at the end of the day, if we think about what I said was the core driver for us, which is to help people create a home, they're all doing their part in that journey. And it's amazing how, you find one person that might enter our organization through a particular, service or offering and end up in a completely different part of the business. And it's great to say that
offer though too, that everything stems off that. Like Microsoft to have to sell everybody a computer. It's everything can be derived based on that value or
correct.
To build a home or to give them whatever the case may be.
And it's great to think about it that, from a business point of view, you've had, a prospect, a potential customer come in, and instead of them walking out empty-handed, you've been able to offer them, they came in thinking that they wanted to buy a car and they've ended up walking out with, a bag or whatever it might be. In our case, they came in looking to buy a home and we said, maybe you're not quite ready. You need to work with the finance team first and refinance things or have a look, or actually, perhaps before you buy a home, you need a job, you need this, you need that. Let's set you up on the right path to be able to get there.
That rapport to be able to get a client or a customer to become a client for life, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So I need to ask, because I guess I want to also learn from that, building that one team culture. So you're acquiring different businesses. I've acquired small accountancy practices, loan books as well, but creating that into one ecosystem, what would be your biggest challenges, your biggest learnings from that?
We're still learning.
Yeah.
I don't think we've got it right, and it's really hard, right? You've got different cultures. You've got not only, different idiosyncrasies within those disciplines and
how
different parts of the industry.
Like that,
So I think, it's anyone can go and buy a business or merge with a business. Ultimately, particularly if you're thinking about buying a business, if you've got a balance sheet and you've got a checkbook, you can do it. But it's really easy to run that value of that business into the ground. And we see it happen in some of the big listed companies that, have got this sort of pressure of all this, cash on their balance sheet, and they go out and buy businesses, and then you find 3-5 years later, they've written it off down to zero. So, it goes back to everything talking about being like-minded, thinking about that single purpose that we have and saying, do the founders, the leaders of that business also share in that same belief? And are they the right fit? And, more often than not, you got to look at it and you got to be honest with yourself and say, financially, that looks like a really good deal, but it's not the right fit. And it's the deals that you don't do that often become the best deals, because, when you're thinking again about being a people business, it's amazing how toxic the wrong people or just not the right fit can be. And, it might take 5 minutes to destroy what might have taken 5 years to build up over that time. So you've really got to know the right people. And I think, the most recent acquisitions and mergers that we've done have been with those leaders of those business. We've had, in our organization and me personally, more than a decade-long relationship. And as I said, we've started as, a business relationship and a sort of an external alliance, if you want to say, and working closely together and really got to know each other and spent time both business-wise, but even, sort of socially as well, to sort of say, look, we're all like-minded, we can work together, and that's sort of set the foundation. But scaling business is hard, right? There's always growing troubles. There's always, clashes of the way people do things in different cultures. So
egos, the way people operate.
Yeah.
I actually know, because it's funny, because as you're talking to me, I'm listening, because I know a couple of the people that now you work alongside, which you worked. I know one with over 10 years.
Yep.
And one for many years as well. So now they work alongside you guys as well. So as you're talking to me and I'm listening, I'm thinking, well, boom, boom, I go, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, look, and also, you get people that really good business people often have only ever run their own business. And that's also a bit of a mindset shift that you look at and you say, well, they've been this sort of lone wolf. Do they actually want to be part of
something bigger,
something bigger? And for a lot of people, it might be, no, I want to have total control and not be, not that, we would create, or we think that we create a controlling environment. But at the end of the day, when you look at that clarity compass, you look at what we are in this one team, it's more than just, hey,
you're responsible for a lot more than just your branch, your business, or your arm. You're now responsible. You're part of a collective, which is that one team culture philosophy.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, I don't know, being in business for, as I said to you, since 2005, it would be a hard concept to merge with such a big business and to think, I'm kind of, not that CEO or that single owner. I guess it's like being a shareholder now. You're responsible to your whole team.
Yeah. And look, the people that thrive are the ones that actually look at it and say, you know what?
We can do more.
I can do more of what I'm good at. So, when we're talking about that clarity compass, on the other side is what are our clear competitive advantages. And we don't actually have a lot, right? Because when you look at it, I could say to you, we make the best apartments in the country, in the state, in the suburb. So do a lot of other people, right? And that's where I said you've got to have that humility to look at it and say, we're not actually the best. We might be in a group of people that make really good things. So don't get me wrong. I think what we do is amazing, but that isn't something that we can claim and keep competitive. One of the things that we do have that fit really well is we say, as part of an organization, we have a really good ability to centralize back office admin and to be able to leverage that support and that structure. So we've got a really, really expensive CFO, right? We joke all the time about his salary and we laugh and so forth, but the skills and experience that he brings to some of those smaller businesses that say, we're lucky if we could have afforded a bookkeeper.
Access, of course.
And you've got access there.
That's just massive.
And so that's one of those competitive advantages that we have. So when we look at some of those businesses, we say, right, all this back office admin that you were doing as a business owner that you're not really good at, right? You're not good at admin and you're wasting all this time on, you're freed of that. Go out and do what you do best. So, whether that be being out there, networking, creating relationships, don't be constrained by, I've got to go back in the office and do the bookkeeping and pay the bills. Because guess what? That's part of what being in this organization does. Having access to the right people. So one of the things that we look at is, our facilities management business has access to our construction guys that could never, ever, afford to be part of a traditional facilities management business. They're just too expensive and too much experience, and they don't want to do it. But those guys that have got access to that in the organization and that's really, again, I've been banging on about a lot, but I think because it is that sort of moment of clarity when you understand about what it really means to work in a team, not the cliche, oh yeah, let's work together as a team.
But it's so much more than that, because as you're talking to me, it's not just you do the things you're great at. Imagine having, which you guys offer, that level of CFO, that level of knowledge, that level of expertise, that level of oneness, how much you can scale your company even further.
Yeah.
Because it's not just having the things that you're not good at. It's having someone who, as you said, you can't say I'm the best, but I'm one of the best, but bringing a more collective, I'm going to help you in every area. That's
Exactly.
where the true power would come from, wouldn't it?
100%. And, you can imagine it where you say, look, and, it can be, we say to everyone that wants to join our organization, our back office is one of our core competitive advantages that we've got. But also some of the key people that we've got, we say, like this can be one of the best networkers around. And again, you perhaps couldn't afford this guy in this part of the business, but hey, you want to take him out on a pitch. You want to take him out. You want to get him to help you get in front of the right people to be able to present your offering. He's the guy that can do it.
Which is what you're good at, is what you want to do.
Correct. And that's something that it's still a work in progress, right? I think we're doing a pretty good job, but there's some things that we're not quite there, right yet. But that's, going back to that clarity compass, thinking about what is it that we're trying to achieve, what are our values, that whole team mentality and everything, and about delivering that nothing is beneath you, move with that urgency, leverage what we've got, and that's really, really strong. And, I think that's what set us up to date, and I imagine that's what's really going to help us to continue to scale over the next, 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Well, most definitely it's going to attract a different level of business. It's going to keep expanding. And as you talk to me, I can really see the advantages of partnering with a business that has that ability to allow you to scale. So it's been an absolute pleasure, James. I could probably talk for hours and hours because I'm glad I've learned so much, and I hope all the listeners have enjoyed it as much as me. So as is tradition with Relentless, we go through a bunch of fast questions. Are you ready?
Now, this is really going to test me on that core value about being decisive and quick. So fire away. I'm ready.
These ones are easy, but we'll get a big car. Breakfast or dinner for breakfast?
Breakfast.
Do it yourself or hire a professional?
Hire a professional.
Jeans or dress pants?
Dress pants.
What's the first thing you think of when you wake up in the morning?
What have I got to do today?
Pop or rock music?
Pop.
Museums or art galleries?
Neither.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
That's most. Luxury hotel or backpacking?
Luxury hotel.
All of this. Ice cream or cake?
Cake.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Dogs or cats?
I'll take them both.
Netflix or YouTube?
I'll go with Netflix.
Morning or night?
Morning, definitely.
What's one thing that a mentor's given you that you hold dear, one piece of advice?
One of the earliest things I've got, and I think still rings true, is, and it's a really simple one, you've got 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you talk. And that's hard, right? Guys like you and I, we love to talk. But, I still think that all the time, and I say 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen twice as much as you talk.
I remember I had one of my ex-bosses trainer go to him, I want to be the best salesman on the planet. He goes, you can be. He goes, you need to listen more. I said, what was that? Because I talk underwater.
Yeah.
I was always laughing to hear that. What's one book that you've read that's positively influenced your life?
I don't read books, so I can't say that, but...
and maybe a clip or something that you've seen?
Look, I've probably got to say, there's been a lot of, we were talking before about in the more recent years with my young kids, I've got onto TikTok and, I hate to say it to all your listeners because I feel like a child, but I love TikTok. And they, one of the things that's great is they, sort of surface some really good quotes or some good thoughts in bite-sized pieces. So, things like the Kobe Bryant thing that we talked about before, maybe it's more a moment that I think in year 12, playing rugby and the first 15 that I was in, we had played the first half of the season and we were really pretty ordinary. And we started the second half of the season, which was sort of I can't remember what it was called, but where all the high schools that you were part of that group played together. And the coach did something really different, and that sort of stuck with me about having that focus and dedication. He didn't talk to us before the game. He sat us all down and he'd written a letter in an envelope, and he gave us each one an envelope, and we didn't talk for 10 minutes. We read that letter.
Was it the same letter, obviously?
No, everyone had a different letter.
Everyone had a different letter.
And he had taken the time
Wow.
to think about what we needed to focus on in our game.
So what you needed to hear,
what I needed to do, and exactly. And
dedicated person.
That was the turning point. We went on to be undefeated, right? And we were not a team with raw talent, but we did that hard work, and having that focus of saying, not this general speech, motivational or unmotivational, to everyone. It was core focus to what you needed to do, So what I was told to do in my letter was different to the next person, the next person, the next person.
That level of attention and detail and care is incredible.
Yeah. So, that's not a book, but I think that's something
It's a life lesson.
that happened where I thought, you know what? Everyone's different. So what's right for you is not right for the next person or the next person. And as hard as it is, you want to be efficient and you want to be able to do things, one to many for a time basis. But there's also times to stop and say, right, that person's personality and what makes them great doesn't mean that it will make the next person great, because they can be different.
Which gets that to the next level. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
One superpower. Wow. Well, I'd love to be a professional sports person in any of my sports. I just think that that'd be something great I think that feeling of representing your country is something that, you could never take away. And it's something that is, 99.9% of us never get to feel and do. And I think that would be great. So I don't know if you call that a superpower, but that's something that, I think would be a great thing to experience.
You are a professional businessman, so I think that's equally as impressive. And last question, scale of 1 to 10, how much have you enjoyed being on the podcast?
Oh, it's got to be 20 out of 10.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this as much as me. James, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much for having me.